Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming out. My name is Jamie Stark. This is yet again another edition of our Skype for Business video broadcast for today, April the 15th. Today's Friday. And I am really excited to be joined by a very special guest, Mr. Bill Vertine from our engineering organization. I've invited Bill here to join us because we this week have announced the global availability of Cloud Connector Edition, Skype for Business Cloud Connector Edition. Yay! I know. And Bill, you were involved a little bit in the engineering of Cloud Connector Edition, maybe just a little.
A little bit, yeah. So just to give you some background on me, I've been in Microsoft since 1999. I worked on smartphone and a bunch of other stuff before that, but I've been specifically in the God, we've changed product names 3 times now. But it was Office Communicator, and then it was Link, and now we're in Skype for Business. So, yeah, I've been in the, whatever you want to call that morphing product name group since
the UC group.
Yes, the
UC group. And in fact, that was even a name change, right? It was RTC, Real Time Communications, and then right.
So I started working in that group in I want to say November of 2007. So I've been here 9 years, which just by default makes me an old timer. So
I too, I share the old timer with you. You know, it's okay. We it's all good. We can get through it.
So in the Link group or whatever you want to call it, I've done partner stuff. I've done I made telephones. I made all kinds of things, and now I'm in charge of our hybrid PSTN products.
That's right. That's right.
And
so by hybrid PSTN, you know, that is not just Cloud Connector Edition, but that's all the different ways that we with Cloud PBX go and connect out to other PSTN circuits that are not PSTN services that come from Microsoft.
That's correct. In some cases, we just publish documentation and tell people how to reconfigure their existing topologies. In other cases, we work with partners. I'm just responsible for the entire space, of which Cloud Connector is not only the most recent, but also a very high capacity and feature-rich way to do the same thing.
Yeah, very good, very good. And so we've actually had the opportunity a few times here on the broadcast to mention Cloud Connector, you know, because I've done a few of these, and you know, me and Sean will get on. We'll talk about Cloud PBX. You can set that wherever. It's all good. We've talked about Cloud PBX. We'll talk about the PSTN calling service, and so naturally, hybrid comes into play, and just kind of walking customers through how they can use their existing Skype for Business server topology or a Link Server 2013 topology, connect that up with Office 365, and then connect that up to their PBX and use that for users who are homed in Office 365.
Correct.
Yeah. And so what Cloud Connector, of course, is, it's so great. Like the whole concept being, let's take all the goodness there in the server and let's just shrink it down into these kind of essential components.
Well, you know, the funny thing about that is, like, our code name for this all along was MinTop, or minimum topology, because that was exactly what we were doing. We were pulling stuff out, right? And there's a lot of stuff you don't need once you have Cloud PBX in the back end. You don't need on premise, but there is some stuff you absolutely do need on premise. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out what that minimum size was. And today, all the components in Cloud Connector are identical to the components in the standard on-premise topology. So there's no difference. In other words, I don't have a different mediation server. It's the same mediation server. So we changed the mediation server so it could do either, but it is a single product now. So we haven't like forked the product.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So it's actually, so bit-wise, if you look at the bits in full-blown Skype for Business server and the bits in Cloud Connector Edition, they're identical, but in the development of Cloud Connector Edition, we had to do work in order to,
we had to do a few things. The two major components in Cloud Connector are the edge and the mediation server. we have some supporting stuff in there, like we have CMS to kind of configure things.
And
We've
what's CMS?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's Configuration Management Server.
I think it's Centralized Management Server.
I don't know.
When
We just
Cornel
call it
comes
CMS.
on a little bit later in the show,
Yeah.
he'll be sure to correct all of the technical fumbles
I'm just speaking in vague terms. but CMS, which is all I've ever known it as, is among other things, it configures various components. So we have, in addition to the Edge and to the mediation server, we have CMS. We also have Active Directory and a domain controller. Now, people usually get kind of wigged out by that, but the AD and domain controller is only for the Cloud Connector edition, so the components can trust each other, right?
Got it.
It doesn't in any way touch the existing AD on the enterprise or in the cloud for that matter. It's its own little bubble. And so Cloud Connector edition is stateless. It has no knowledge of users. It has no knowledge of anything other than the tenant in the cloud it needs to talk to, as well as certain addresses for your telephony gateways or the PBX or whatever you're using to provide the PSTN. But it's effectively stateless. So in that case, we have our own little kind of AD bubble that just allows us to just kind of operate in our own little world. Also, Cloud Connector is HA, so we're high availability. We support. We have two different hardware topologies that we're supporting out of the gate. One is a high-end topology, and we've published what the recommended hardware is. But off the top of my head, I would say it's we recommend 2 6-core processors, and I think it was 32 or maybe it's 64 gig of memory. I forget.
We've got all the specifics documented. But I just want to interrupt real quick. I'm getting a message from Paul in the back who's monitoring the Q&A. The Q&A is up and running, and Paul is there to answer some kind of the simple questions. Actually, it's down at the bottom of your screen right now. Paul's there to answer some of the high-level questions, and then any good ones, he's going to flip over to Bill and I, so that way we can answer them here live. So don't hesitate to throw your questions into the Q&A manager. Unfortunately, with Bing Pulse today, we're getting a little bit of a DNS error on the Bing Pulse, so we didn't have Bing Pulse.
I'm just going to assume that they love what I'm saying.
Well, I guess we'll find out from the Q&A too. Like that could be another way that you can communicate to us asynchronously. I do not have Twitter up and running because that would just be way too distracting. So so I guess one of the things we didn't really touch on is that this is delivered significantly. It's delivered and packaged significantly differently than our existing server product. So the existing server, you have a whole bunch of executables that you then run to go in and install services, and you do all these things. Cloud Connector Edition is packaged and delivered very differently. How is that set up?
So you go to download.microsoft.com, and there's you can search for Cloud Connector Edition.
Or you could go to aka.ms/getcce. That's another one. Yeah,
another way to get it. And you'll end up at the download page, and you can download this product. And there's no charge for the download itself. I mean, obviously, you're going to need, in addition to our download, you're going to need server license, right? And the requirements for server are listed there on the download page. So obviously, I realize that server licenses are not free. Many of my customers have them.
But the idea is that when you've licensed Cloud PBX, you can use the Cloud Connector Edition, and the download is instead of bits to install, it's actually a set of VMs, right? So it's a little bit different the way that we're doing this.
We download a fairly elaborate installation script. Matter of fact, I had like core engineering team programmers work on the installation script for many months. Actually, they worked on this probably for over 2 months. And what it allows us to do is we have to, once you have this Windows Server 2012 R2 installed, you download this package and you run the installation, and it will create VMs. It will It will create the guest OSs and all the VMs and make sure that those are updated and all that stuff. And then it will install the appropriate Skype for Business components in each VM. And it sets up these virtual network switches in the background, and it does all this stuff. And then when everything's all set up and working, it points the virtual network switches to the appropriate Ethernet connection, and then the device is up and running. We also have built into the product, I wouldn't call it an automatic update, but basically if you execute the update script, it will, in the background while the system's running, create 4 more virtual machines.
Oh, wow.
It will install, set them up, and once they're updated and functioning, it will immediately switch the virtual private network in the back so that the traffic will move.
And that makes sense because it's all stateless, right? Because we're just thinking about sessions here, and so that's something that you can just fire that up in the background, and so essentially the upgrade is kind of transparent to usage.
Largely, right? I mean, there is obviously, even though there are some as connections are being started and stopped, there are moments when a call could be dropped. There absolutely, but once the call is up and running, right, there's no impact at all.
That's right? Awesome.
So in any case, there's a variety of methods and things you would do to upgrade this. You may choose to drain the box, just let it go.
Yeah.
And with HA, you can also fail people over to the other boxes as well. So we allow the concept of a site so that you can group cloud connectors into this logical kind of grouping that we call a site that allow you to make sure that you route your PSTN stuff to a gateway that makes sense. Right, because what happens when it's stateless and all your offices are connected, and I won't say which company it is. We had when we were doing our original tap, they had an office in Austin, Texas, and an office in Singapore, and every now and then one of their Singapore guys would go to call his wife as he was heading home, and they would route the call through Austin, Texas. Right,
a little bit of latency in that.
The latency and cost. Right? So we figured that all out, and we kind of set up this kind of like concept of gateway affinity that allows us to say, hey, these are the gateways you should be going to.
Right.
And these are the CCEs that are associated with those gateways, and there's a group of them, and they're HA, and then you can have multiple HA groups even within the site, right? It's not that the HA group is a slightly different concept than a site, but the site means that you can go to any device in that site and it can reach appropriate gateways.
And this is something that we've talked in the past in these broadcasts about the value of doing preview, and this is absolutely one of the key values of doing preview is that when there are things that you can think through in the architecture, but it's only when you get it running live in a production environment with real customer traffic that you realize, you go, oh wow, well this thing's happening. What's the right way for us to address this?
This was a repercussion of being stateless,
right?
Because in the past we had state, so all the traffic once the call was up, kept going somewhere, and in this case, it could go anywhere, right? And so that's a blessing and a curse, right? So we invented the concept of sites, and so that's one of the things you'll see. And
it's a different concept of sites than what practitioners may be familiar with when they're setting up CAC or when they're setting up the network.
Do we overload another word?
There may be another overloaded operator here. It's okay. It's okay.
Like hybrid itself, right? So hybrid means everything to everybody.
Or cloud.
Yeah, cloud, exactly. So I now have 3 overloaded terms in my product. But in any case, we got there working, and it was a repercussion of stateless, and we found it definitely in our early adopter program. I do want to touch base real quickly on capacity.
Yeah, definitely. Because you mentioned that earlier about
the larger hardware, which is I won't go into the natty details, but it's about a $3,000 to $4,000 server.
It's a server class, enterprise class server.
Enterprise class server, redundant power supplies. All the stuff you would expect in a data center. That particular device is, I'm going to say, about $4,000, right? US dollars. like I said, depending on how you kit it up, it can go up or down. But that particular device can handle 500 simultaneous calls.
Right.
Now, depending on simultaneous PSTN calls,
or sessions, or I mean, no, it's true. It is just PSTN traffic, so it's a good way to characterize
well, some of the media for online meetings and things like that would actually flow through us and not be necessarily PSTN related. So CCE does have a role when your client is attaching to a meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's in the cloud.
Okay.
But in any case, we support 500 calls, and depending on your call load model, right, which is different for every company. Some companies, if you're doing a lot of customer calling and stuff like that, you may have 4 to 6 users per call line.
Yep.
If you're like Microsoft guy, you could probably put 20 because we never use our phones, right? We email each other if we're in the same office, right? But the reality is
we IM each other. If there's
yes, I am. Yeah. We've moved on from here. But the reality is that we say anywhere from 6 to 10 is usually what people kind of loaded at as far as like users per line.
And this is actually documented in our mediation
Yes.
server documentation, where you have like a heavy model, a medium model.
Yeah. So what that means is that your $4,000 piece of hardware that's also potentially, which is running maybe a couple $1,000s worth of server licenses underneath it. So for $6,000 all up, you'd be able to run up to 5,000 users, right, of hybrid PSTN against Cloud PBX, right?
Yep.
So now we also have a smaller piece of hardware that I want to talk about, which was something that we kind of, it was an aspirational thing that turned out to actually just work, which never really happens. Usually these aspirational things end up, there ends up being something horribly wrong in the concept, and you have to go do a lot of work to make it work. But in this case, it just worked. And so we created a smaller version of hardware that essentially, we used a lot of metaphors in the team, like a Costco PC or a Best Buy PC or something.
That's right.
Something you could buy at retail for like $1,000, right? Essentially, it's like a quad-core i7 with a couple Ethernet connectors and a couple disks and RAID 0 and loaded up with RAM, right?
Yeah.
And that type of device is capable of 50 simultaneous calls. Matter of fact, it's probably capable of 100, but we rated it 50. And what that means is that you could run 300 to 500 users on that.
That's a good sized branch,
well,
right?
It's not only a branch, but it also is a great way to do a trial, because we want to. All too often when you wanted to deploy Link, you had to take the whole shower just to figure out if you liked it. Right?
Application delivery controller, reverse proxy.
So in this case, you could say, hey, I have an Avaya Cisco PBX. I want to try this Cloud PBX thing, right? So I can go out and spend $1,000. I don't need a super big budget ask. Maybe I can hide it in expense or whatever you do. And you go buy this thing. And you put it on your Amex card, and you bring it in, and you download the software that's up on the download server, and you install it, and you hook it up to your PSTN source, which could be your Avaya or Cisco PBX.
Folks could do this with the trial, with the only exception that we don't formally support the onmicrosoft.com DNS. Like, so you could do it with a trial even. You just got to register the DNS and set up DNS.
Fair enough.
And then then that's it. Like you a PC that you've got, probably laying around in your building somewhere. You could, throw extra RAM into the thing, fire it up. Now, I'm getting a bunch of questions from Paul. So there's one I want to touch on before we bring Corneal in to talk about the
everything I said.
To talk about the actual experience of using this and installing it. A lot of folks out there have Skype for Business server or Link server today, and they want to know about if and how they can run Cloud Connector Edition. What we've always been talking about is, if you have Skype for Business server, if you have Link server, you can do cloud connectivity today with Cloud PBX for nothing. And that is included with the software, as my business planning partner
There's no additional software, actually. It's just It's just configuring your existing deployment, and we provided guidance. There's a document up on TechNet that explains how to do that.
That's right. And so, and today, the current state of the support is that Cloud Connector Edition is for customers who don't have any Link server or Skype for Business server software on-prem, and then the two of those do not coexist today. That's the current state of affairs.
Current. Eventually we'll fix it. Eventually we'll get around to making it work and interact better. But right now they're completely separate things. They're both equivalent.
Right. Yeah, there's not like a feature that you get in Cloud Connector Edition that you don't get in the server or vice versa when it comes to the hybrid PSTN.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I mean, some people like the idea of making their hybrid kind of a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like philosophically, it's like, the on-prem people are here, and the cloud people are here, right? and I get that, and that also is some of the feedback we got from our technology adopter program, because when we started, we thought we'll just do these two things.
Yeah, right.
We'll be happy, and it turns out a non-trivial number of people want the separate device, even if they have a topology.
Totally.
So we're going to work to make that happen. I can't give you any dates.
Yeah, of course. No, not asking for any. No, totally understand. We're doing the.
But we're aware of the feedback. We're going to work on it.
Yep.
And we'll figure it out.
And that's something that is like adding other features to Cloud PBX or doing any of the other kind of work. It's something that we prioritize, we schedule, we kind of figure out how they can be slotted in. And when we've got some news about it, of course, you guys are going to know about it here on the broadcast. We put that out on the public office roadmap and those types of things. These are great questions, actually, and so I'm excited to be able to have a technical expert here be ready to join in. So
live from the Netherlands.
I know. So what's funny is that Cornel can be a little bit of a kidder, and so I'm hoping that he is actually ready to be thrown over. Cornel, you're going to want to unmute your microphone before I throw it over to you. And I'm going to just want you to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you've been up to with Cloud Connector. So go ahead, Cornel.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Bill. So I'm Cornel Bullens. I indeed live in the Netherlands, the beautiful, very wet country at this point. I like to consider us the dead center of Europe. I've been working with Cloud Connector for a while now. In the customer preview program that we've set up. By the way, if you're interested, go to skypepreview.com and sign up, and we'd be happy to get you and your customer in there. So I've been working with some of our initial preview customers. I've been guiding them on the journey through Cloud Connector, which has been pretty awesome so far. So I'd love to tell you about their experiences so far. So what we've been, I think that the general comment that we've seen when we were working at these customers is that they enjoyed the fact that it's a very structured approach. So you go in, there's a set of, there's a very well-defined planning guide that we can give to our customers, and it completely consists of all the points that the customer needs to address before they actually start implementing Cloud Connector. So it's a very concise list that says things like, well, which IP addresses do you have? Which ports need to be opened? Which certain certificate requirements, basically everything they need before they start moving forward with Cloud Connector. And the beauty of that is that when you give your customer, when customers get such concise lists and really it's basically a condensed version of the Skype for Business requirements. And when they complete all those requirements, once they start deploying Cloud Connector, it really is a quick, clean procedure. They have this server standing by. You log into the server. You run a script that basically downloads all the components for Cloud Connector. It starts preparing a server for Cloud Connector, make sure it's updated to the latest version, gets the latest version of both the installer as well as the Skype for Business pieces. And then once you start the installation, an hour in and you're basically done. It's an hour and 50 minutes, and you have a working connection straight from Office 365, from your Cloud PBX into your PSTN connection. And what we've done with those customers, they've been really impressed that we could actually go in and start a deployment. And when they've met these prerequisites, when we were like an hour and 15 minutes in, at that point they could already place outgoing calls and get incoming calls as well. So I think that the general perception of the customer has been very positive so far. It's really for those customers that have been blocked, and as we know in Europe, we haven't been blessed with PSTN calling in all of our countries. And we have a lot of those customers that are very interested in this PSTN calling and have been blocked so far. So instead of us waiting for all the local regulations and all the local things to get done so we can offer PSTN calling, this actually offers customers a very clear path to cloud PSTN cloud PSTN calling, so they can actually get ready in Office 365 and leverage those E5 licenses or that E3 and Cloud PBX and start placing calls via their Cloud PBX.
That's awesome, Cornel. Hey, thank you so much for a little bit of the overview. Tell us a little bit about what a kind of installation with a preview customer is like, and I mean this is kind of an insight that we haven't had on the broadcast yet, of actually kind of hearing a little bit of the inside of what a customer kind of gets to experience with respect to preview. Like, talk a little bit about just kind of the process of installing Cloud Connector Edition from scratch. I think that's something that folks would be really interested in, because I bet a lot of the folks here just have heard about it but haven't gone through the process yet. And then talk a little bit about what kind of what was different for the preview customers versus what customers can expect to find today.
Sure. So great question. So the interesting thing is, I started working with Skype for Business related products about, I suppose, 10 years ago, when we were still in the LCS and OCS phase. And we started off with the beta products at that point, where the beta products really were, here's a notepad and it's probably going to work, and figure it out, and we'll hear from you when this works. And I'm happy to say that working with preview customers is luckily nothing like that anymore. So we have a very structured approach. So when Bill's team, they create versions of Cloud Connector, and when we go to those initial customers, we actually have a working product. We have a working, internally validated product where we think, well, we go out to these customers and we feel confident about that this will actually work. And we're now basically testing it against everything that customers can throw at us. Because, well, getting things to work in the lab is well, it's great, but we have to see what customers can throw against it and how they'd like to implement it, and making sure that once we release, we actually have something that customers want, not something that works in the lab. So we go out to these customers and we ask them questions around, well, this is how we feel about the product. This is what we think is great about it. How do you feel about it? What do you think are the strong points and the bad points, especially around installation? And when we started off with the installing, we saw interesting things around. For instance, we assumed that they would always have to have an internal DNS server, and we assumed some things around networking, where through these installations we found out a lot of feedback, like if customers do or do not have internet access in the DMZ, and we got to validate all of those assumptions that we had against those preview customers, got all that feedback back. And when we started off with a set of PowerShell scripts and a base VHD to install, and we set some, we thought that each customer would have a pre-prepared VHD and that they could use their own, which got interesting results. So we got all of that feedback and all of those experiences into our programs again, so that we could create a very streamlined installation, a very streamlined a process for those customers. So where we started off with an installation where we had a lot of manual steps and a lot of manual interventions, we're now at a point where if we're starting Cloud Connector, it really is a process of downloading the bits, as Jamie and Bill already mentioned. You're downloading those bits. Once those bits are there, you get a point of which where the bits actually check if they're the latest version. Once they're the latest version, they get the latest version of the Skype for Business bits. They start an empty VHD, and they basically create a sysprep that a customer can validate that they are really the latest version, that all the latest Windows updates have been installed, and we proceed from there. And the one thing that's always been there from the beginning is a INI file that you could complete in advance, and making sure that you get all of your ducks in order, or ducks in a row, I should say, before you start your actual deployment, with a very large portion of error checking. We've gotten that from the beginning, and that is something that our customers really appreciated. One of the other things, and I do have to really congratulate Bill on his awesome team when they're building those PowerShell commandlets, because this is not this one guy in an attic, right? There are many people working on this and making this great, and I'm sure Bill will take the time to plug some of his team members. But the things that you see, if you make mistakes in your INI file, or if something goes wrong, there's a huge set of error checking built in, and error control, and things like if you make a mistake in your server, like not enough memory, or if you the script actually stops there, it suggests changes, and it actually gives you the option to continue from a previous failure and things like that. And that's something our customers really appreciated, because that's where you get a difference between a script that's basically fire and forget, and if it really turns to be a fire in the end, then your host, and you have to stop, and then you figure out where in your 50 lines in your INI file you made a mistake. Because everybody makes typos, it just happens. And the fact that when we made those typos, the script just picked them up and told us, hey, you made a typo over there, you have to fix it, or else we can't continue, and it gives you suggestions. That's really, a lot of the customers notice that, and they mentioned this specifically, like the error checking in this is extremely robust, and we feel confident about using this in production. Because if the one thing at least I've noticed, is that when you work with these customers, and the installation process and the configuration process is very robust, reliable method, then people feel good about using this in production. If it doesn't crash 15 times during installation, it just feels like a solid product. And the nice thing of the process where we started at LCS and now we're at Skype for Business and things like Cloud Connector, the way we put these products to our customers and in the market is a very solid approach, where we have a very solid, stable product when we're deploying. So the customers, even from the beginning, and while the beginning has been very different than our final product, there's always been a trustworthy process where we could start off with a solid product and end up with a solid product. And the changes we've made have been mostly around making it look better, making it work better, making it work quicker, like the upgrade process that Bill mentioned. It's a 5-minute downtime between switching of an old to a new version, which is awesome. And that's if you have a slow environment. It's things like that that customers just notice that there's a process that's done from beginning to end. There's a decent solution in the market, and that's been picked up extremely positively.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Cornel. Really appreciate your insights there and some of your thinking on this, and the thinking you had around what the customer experience is like. Really appreciate that. Hold on to the line here, because as you've been talking, we've had a bunch of questions come in from the Q&A manager that Paul has been getting to me. A few of these we've been able to talk about. We talked about the on-premises connectivity piece, on-premises Skype for Business server with Cloud Connector Edition, and how those two things are not for coexistence. Cornel, you mentioned about the DMZ and how Cloud Connector Edition is up and running within a customer's DMZ. So that was another one. Folks wanted to know exactly where, from a topology perspective, That was from Sachin.
I need to talk about that.
Oh yeah, okay, great.
So if you're using over-the-top internet to connect between your enterprise and Office 365 Cloud, then you put the Cloud Connector Edition in the DMZ. If you have ExpressRoute or MPLS and you have a trusted network connection, typically those terminate inside the DMZ because they're trusted network connections. There may be some kind of router or subnet separation between it and the enterprise, but they're typically inside the firewalls in the DMZ. So in that case, Cloud Connector Edition has to be in the same logical network as where the MPLS terminates. So in that case, Cloud Connector is not in the DMZ. It's wherever your network connectivity is.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
It needs to be able to see the cloud on one connection and the CorpNet on the other.
Exactly.
The DMZ is one way to do that if you're doing over-the-top internet. If you have MPLS or ExpressRoute, then you got to kind of follow it into where that network connection comes in.
Perfect. Okay, great. That was another one of the questions that that came in, was talking about how Cloud Connector Edition can be. How do we think about it with regard to ExpressRoute?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that MPLS, which is the technology underneath ExpressRoute, provides deterministic networking and provides a better audio experience. Some people are comfortable with the internet, over-the-top internet. Ultimately, it's a decision that each IT manager makes based on both the quality of their internet and really how important audio quality is in their company life. For some people, if you're like a telemarketing company or whatever, it's usually important. Right?
Absolutely.
If it's if you're frankly like Microsoft, we have one call. When my phone rings, it actually shocks me. What is that noise, right?
Jumps.
And so typically, in a company like ours, even though we do have MPLS, obviously, because we tie into our own cloud with high quality link, it would be totally okay for a company like us probably not to have it because we don't make a lot of phone calls, right? So people choose what's appropriate for them.
Yep.
And it affects where a Cloud Connector sits is the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, very good. There was one other that Sachin had, and he wanted to know a little bit about the configuration required after doing the installation of Cloud Connector Edition. We've talked about the script and the way the script kind of unfolds the different virtual machines and the work that we've done to do the on the networking front within the host. Obviously, one of the pieces of configuration that needs to happen is that next hop step here, right, is configuring mediation to talk to the session border controller or the gateway, the IP telephony service provider.
Or the PBX.
Oh, yeah, or of course, yeah, or if we're sitting behind the PBX. What are some of the other kind of post-installation script configuration things that customers need to think about? And we'll start with Bill, and then we'll let Cornel correct us all here.
Most of that stuff actually happens in the INI file beforehand, right? So that we can set that stuff up as part of the installation. A large majority, if not all, I hesitate to say everything, but the vast majority of stuff you need to configure is done in the INI file and is run through as part of the scripts. So when the system finishes running, I believe it's largely ready to go. Cornel, you can jump in and correct me on this, but it's pretty much.
Well, there isn't that much to correct, honestly. Thank you. So so one of the things, and this is the beauty of running through those cycles in a preview program, is that when we started off, we had many things to configure after the INI file. So we had to set up gateways and DNS servers, and sometimes additional certificate trusts on those edge servers. And because we capture that feedback and we keep feeding that back into the product, we're actually now at a point where Bill's absolutely correct that it really is 99.9% of all the configuration. It's done in the INI file. And sure, we are working with customers that have sometimes very specific routing requirements, and we need to set up static routes and things like that. For proper routing, for instance, because really the only two components that talk to the in and the outside are the mediation server and the edge server, and sometimes they need some special routes in there to be able to talk to those different network components. That's done afterwards. We've got some customers that want to install things like monitoring. That's done afterwards. We've got sometimes we have a if you're using, and I'd strongly advise to not do that, but if you're using a lesser known certificate authority, not one of that certificate authorities that is by default in the Windows trusted store, or that's in the that's trusted by Office 365, you do have to import some of those intermediary certificates. But that's about it. It really is everything that is there to configure is and should be configured in the INI file.
That's just awesome. Yeah,
So-
I mean, so I think the message for everybody here is that this is available. You can go and download it, and it's really straightforward to get up and running. Like, that's just really cool.
One of the key things that we focused on this product, outside of quality and reliability, the obvious things you want in a communication system, was about removing friction. Right, I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Right, like how do I make it easier to do and less likely to fail, and all these other things, because there's a lot of friction in deploying these type of things, and which is precisely, for example, why we came out with that smaller hardware topology. Some of the friction is, oh my God, I need $8,000 of budget, and I need a system integrator, and I got to boil the ocean, and so we were able to kind of say, hey, you could try it here and figure it out, and once you figure it out and realize how awesome it is, you will have no problem getting your budget, right? So we went in and we were very nimble in the product group, and we were able to do that. So you will see as this product progresses that we will do a series of things to remove friction, to make it really easy to do, because at some point we just want it to be like you just turn it on and it works, right? At a certain point, I'd love to get to that point.
Oh
right?
yeah, no, and that's completely within the realm of possibility. I mean, it's just a matter of us, kind of getting feedback from customers, continuing our deployments, continuing that work, and just continue to iterate on the different things that slow down and that inhibit the velocity of folks deploying. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's likely that a lot of times people are still going to have SBCs for a variety of reasons, right? SBCs, kind of the universal fix-it for telecom. And so there's a lot of reasons why people still may have them. You don't, strictly speaking, require them. I mean,
right.
we have the same interop capabilities over SIP interfaces as standard Skype for Business.
Because bitwise, the mediation, it's the same. It's the same mediation server, literally.
If your PBX or your gateway natively interoperates with Skype for Business, it'll interoperate with Cloud Connector Edition, because like I said, it's the same component. But we support and we work with the major SBC vendors. We've worked with Acme, we worked with Sonos, we worked with Audio Codes.
Both Acme, both Sonos and Audio Codes had press releases talking about their support of Cloud Connector Edition. Sonos, I don't know if you got a chance to see this. Sonos is actually taking the Cloud Connector Edition and embedding it with their SBC, and so they're going to come out with
Audio already kind of is doing that too.
Yeah, well, with Cloud Bond, with the full server product, Sonos has announced they're going to be doing it with Cloud Connector Edition. So it's the beginning of, I think, a really robust set of work that's going to be happening around the industry. It's really exciting. Yep. Congratulations on a great ship.
Yep.
Hey, Cornel.
I'm so relaxed. If you'd seen me a couple of weeks ago, I was in no way looking to that.
That's great. Hey, Cornel, I want to say thank you so much for coming over and joining us from across the pond. I'll flip back to you if you had any last words.
Well, thank you, Jamie. So the only last words I had were for everybody to go ahead, try it, download it, implement it in your customer's environment. We feel great about the product. It's a solid product. Start using it at your customers, and enjoy the great product that Bill and team have built.
Absolutely, boy, I couldn't say it better myself. Absolutely, it's time to download.
One last plug I'd like to give is we spent a lot of time training, MCS, Microsoft Consulting Services, as well as our SI channel, to understand and to know how to deploy this. So all the major Skype for Business SIs have been trained on this. They know how to do the INI file. They know how to do this. Matter of fact, they should be able to do this like blindfolded by now.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. We totally didn't mention this. The trainings were phenomenal. Cornel actually led a bunch of the trainings. They had real labs up and running. We did a few different sets of this. The last two were on the 4th and the 11th.
Probably
A bunch of MVPs were able to go and get trained.
I think collectively there's probably several hundred people that were trained.
Yeah, right. And that's not something that we've had an opportunity to do in the past, of kind of this, right when the product's available, have everybody be able to get training in real time. And so your partner's ready as well. So we're all ready to go and help you, our customers, go and get Cloud Connector up and running and go light up Cloud PBX and E5. So with that, we're about quarter of the way up to the top of the hour. We're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for coming out. Our next broadcast is going to be about Mac, so don't miss it. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.